"Bury me here," she begged. The rancher pulled the palm fronds, and his hands shook backslash. Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow and leaned against the rough wooden fence, listening to the distant sound of cattle moving lazily under the heat. He had lived on this land for most of his life, tending the animals, repairing fences, and walking the long stretches of earth that had once been his father's. The ranch had always been his sanctuary, a place where the world outside seemed distant and unimportant. Daniel liked it that way. The solitude was comfortable. It gave him space to think, to breathe, to be himself without judgment or expectation. The wind rustled the palm trees at the edge of the property, their fronds whispering softly. Daniel often came here to walk when he needed clarity, letting the patterns of the leaves and the scent of the earth calm his restless thoughts. He knew every corner of this land, every curve of the hills, every patch of wildflowers that sprouted in spring. Life was simple, predictable, and for the most part he liked it. That afternoon, however, something unusual disturbed the quiet rhythm of his day. A figure appeared at the end of the dirt path leading to the ranch house. At first he thought it might be a traveler or someone lost, but as the figure came closer, Daniel realized it was a woman. She walked slowly, leaning slightly on a cane, her steps careful and deliberate. Her clothing was modest, slightly worn, and her hat shielded her face from the relentless sun. There was an air of fragility about her, yet her posture held a quiet determination that caught his attention. Daniel instinctively stepped forward, wiping his hands on his trousers. "Can I help you?" he called out, his voice roughened by years of shouting across fields but soft enough to avoid startling her. The woman lifted her head, revealing pale skin and eyes that seemed to hold decades of unspoken stories. I hope so," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "My name is Evelyn. I've come a long way and I have a request. I don't know if it's something you can grant, but I must try." Daniel studied her carefully. Travelers came and went, sometimes asking for food, sometimes for directions, and occasionally for work. But there was something different about Evelyn. She didn't seem to need anything material. There was a quiet urgency in her gaze, a certain vulnerability mixed with strength. He nodded slowly, unsure why he felt compelled to listen. "Come inside," he said after a moment, stepping aside to let her pass. The ranch house was modest, sturdy, and smelled faintly of wood polish and earth. Inside, Daniel gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tell me what brings you all this way." Evelyn settled herself carefully, her hands folded in her lap. For a moment she didn't speak, simply looking around the room with a soft, wistful smile. "I grew up near here," she began finally, her voice almost a whisper. "This land, it was my sanctuary once. My happiest memories are tied to places like this. I've lived a long life, but I never forgot it. And now, I have only a little time left. I want to spend it here if you will allow me." Daniel felt a strange twist in his chest. People came and went, but rarely did anyone speak with such honesty, such raw sincerity. "You want to live here, permanently?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," she replied, meeting his eyes steadily. "Just until the end, I don't need much. I only want to feel the earth beneath my feet, see the palms sway in the wind, and be close to the land I loved as a child. I don't have family to stay with me. I've asked everywhere else, but no one understands. I need a place to belong, even for a short while." Daniel hesitated. It was unusual, and in truth, it was inconvenient. He valued his privacy above almost everything else, but something about her plea struck a chord deep inside him. He remembered his own childhood, running barefoot through fields, listening to the wind in the trees, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. He could see the longing in her eyes, and in that moment he understood. Perhaps he could give her this gift, even if it meant opening his carefully guarded world to a stranger. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest. "You can stay. I'll show you where you'll be comfortable. It won't be much, but it's honest and simple. A light of relief and gratitude flashed across her face. "Thank you," Evelyn said softly, almost reverently. "I promise I won't trouble you. I only want to be here to be at peace." Over the next few hours, Daniel showed her the ranch in detail. The main house, the small guest room that had been rarely used, the barns, and the palm grove at the far end of the property. Evelyn walked slowly but deliberately, stopping often to touch the trees, smell the flowers, and run her fingers through the rough bark. She spoke little, but her quiet awe was evident in every movement. Daniel noticed the way she paused beneath a particularly tall palm, her eyes closed, as if she were remembering something, a moment lost to time. As the sun began to sink below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Evelyn turned to Daniel. "I want to thank you for this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It means more than you can imagine. I've wandered for so long looking for a place like this. It's not just a house or a room I needed. It's a home. A place where I can feel that life, even if only for a little while, has been kind to me." Daniel nodded, feeling an unfamiliar warmth. He had never considered the idea of sharing his solitude with someone else. Yet there was something deeply satisfying in knowing that this land, which had given him so much comfort, could now offer solace to another. That night, Daniel watched from the porch as Evelyn settled into the guest room. The ranch was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. He could hear her soft breathing, sense her presence, and for the first time in years, the wind through the palms seemed to carry a note of companionship rather than solitude. He realized that even though she had only just arrived, her presence had already begun to change the rhythm of his life, adding a new layer of meaning to the land he had always called his own. And in that quiet moment, beneath the vast desert sky, Daniel understood something he hadn't expected. Life was unpredictable, and sometimes it brought people into our world for reasons we could not immediately understand. But when it did, it was worth opening one's heart, even if only a little, to let them in. Evelyn had arrived at his doorstep with nothing but a plea and a quiet hope, yet she had already begun to make the ranch feel more alive, more human. The wind shifted, rustling the palms once more. Daniel felt a deep sense of anticipation, a quiet curiosity about the days to come. He didn't know exactly what her stay would bring, but he knew this much: something important had begun. Something that would forever change the way he saw the land, the trees, and the life he had so long taken for granted. And as he turned back toward the house, he caught a glimpse of Evelyn looking out the window, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight, a small, serene smile on her lips. For the first time in years, Daniel went to bed that night with a feeling he hadn't known for a long time, a sense of hope, a flicker of connection, and the quiet knowledge that this simple, dusty ranch, with its palms swaying gently in the evening breeze, was about to witness a story far greater than himself. Days passed on the ranch, and a quiet routine began to form between Daniel and Evelyn. Each morning, the sun rose slowly over the hills, bathing the land in soft golden light. Daniel would wake first, checking on the animals, making sure the cattle were fed and the water troughs were full. Evelyn, meanwhile, stayed in her room until the air grew warm, then ventured out to explore the ranch. She moved slowly, careful with each step, but her eyes were wide with curiosity and appreciation. The simple beauty of the land seemed to revive something long forgotten in her spirit. At first, Daniel kept his distance. He was a man of habit, a man used to silence and solitude. He didn't speak much, content to let Evelyn walk among the palms, wander the fields, or sit by the small pond where dragonflies danced across the water. But gradually she began to talk, not with urgency, but as if she were sharing fragments of her life with the trees themselves, hoping someone or something might listen. She spoke of her childhood, growing up in a town not far from here, a place she had left many years ago. She remembered running barefoot across fields that reminded her of this ranch, picking wildflowers with her siblings, and listening to the wind whispering through the palm trees. Her voice was soft, carrying a mix of nostalgia and longing. Daniel, who had spent decades watching the land and rarely speaking about his past, found himself drawn into her stories. He listened in silence at first, then began asking questions, gently coaxing her to share more. "You really loved this land," he said one morning as they walked through the palm grove together. The sun was high, and Evelyn's shadow stretched long across the soft earth. "I did," she replied, touching the rough bark of a palm. "There's a peace here I never found anywhere else. I've traveled for years looking for it again, but it's never quite the same. Coming here, it feels like I've come home." Daniel nodded, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. He had always loved the land, but he had never considered how it might feel to someone who had once lost it and found it again. Evelyn's joy was subtle but powerful, and he found himself noticing things he had overlooked: the delicate curve of the palm fronds, the way sunlight filtered through the trees, the scent of earth after a light morning rain. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn grew stronger in small ways, despite the frailty that had brought her to the ranch. She helped Daniel with small chores, fetching water for the animals or gathering eggs from the chickens. She laughed softly when she stumbled, and Daniel found himself laughing along, a sound he hadn't made in years. Their conversations deepened, covering not only memories of the past but thoughts about life, loss, and the quiet moments that often went unnoticed. Evelyn shared stories of her family, long gone, and Daniel found himself imagining her childhood as if he were walking beside her. She described her parents with warmth and reverence, her siblings with humor and mischief. She spoke of hardships and joys in the same breath, never lingering too long on sadness but never hiding it either. Daniel began to understand why she had come here, why this ranch, these palms, had called to her so strongly. One afternoon, as the wind swirled through the grove, Evelyn stopped suddenly, touching a particularly tall palm. "I want to be buried here," she said quietly, almost as if speaking to the tree itself. "When the time comes, I want the earth beneath me to be soft and familiar, and these palms, they feel like home. Please promise me." Daniel froze. He had not expected this. Burial, death, these were things he rarely considered. The land was for life, not endings. Yet looking into Evelyn's eyes, he saw no fear, no despair, only a quiet certainty. It was not a morbid request. It was a wish born from love and memory. He nodded slowly, unsure of how to find the right words. I promise," he said finally. The weight of the words surprised him. It was a promise heavy with meaning, and yet in that moment it felt right. As the days grew hotter, Evelyn spent more time beneath the palms, reading, sketching, or simply sitting in quiet contemplation. Daniel watched from a distance, often standing in the shade and observing the gentle way she moved, the light in her eyes, the calm she seemed to radiate. The ranch, once silent and solitary, felt alive in a new way. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant lowing of cattle, the chirping of birds, felt richer, more vibrant. Evelyn's presence brought life to the land, and in turn, the land seemed to nurture her. Daniel found himself opening up in small ways he hadn't anticipated. He shared stories of his youth, of growing up on the ranch, of the challenges and joys he had faced alone. Evelyn listened with patience and empathy, never judging, always encouraging him to remember the good moments as much as the hard ones. Their connection grew quietly, not through grand gestures, but through shared moments of understanding, laughter, and mutual respect. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Evelyn and Daniel sat on a fallen log at the edge of the grove. The air was warm but gentle, carrying the faint scent of flowers and earth. Evelyn turned to Daniel with a small, wistful smile. "I feel like I've waited my whole life for this place," she said softly. Not just the land, but the feeling of being understood, of being seen. You've given me that. Daniel was silent for a moment, struck by the simplicity and depth of her words. He realized that her presence had changed him as much as the land had changed her. He felt gratitude, not just for her company, but for the reminder that life could still offer connection and meaning, even in unexpected ways. In the following weeks, Daniel and Evelyn fell into a gentle rhythm. Mornings were spent tending the animals, afternoons walking the grove, and evenings sitting together on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear desert sky. Evelyn often spoke of her dreams, small hopes for each day, and sometimes fears she hadn't voiced to anyone before. Daniel listened, offering comfort and guidance when he could, but mostly he simply shared the silence with her, a silence that felt full and meaningful rather than empty. One morning, Evelyn handed Daniel a small notebook. "I've been writing," she said. "Stories, memories, thoughts I want to leave behind. Not because I expect anyone to read them, but because putting them on paper helps me feel at peace." Daniel took the notebook carefully, flipping through pages filled with delicate handwriting, sketches of the palms, and reflections on life. He felt a surge of emotion, realizing the depth of trust she had placed in him. Through these small acts, their bond strengthened. Daniel began to see the ranch differently, not just as a place of work and routine, but as a living, breathing landscape that held memories, emotions, and life itself. Evelyn's presence reminded him of the fragility and beauty of life, and he cherished each day he spent with her. And so the days continued, each one blending into the next but never monotonous. There was a quiet magic in the way they shared ordinary moments, pouring water for the animals, sitting in the shade, watching the sun sink behind the hills. Daniel realized that life's most meaningful moments often came in the simplest forms, and Evelyn had taught him to recognize and cherish them. As the weeks passed, the bond between the rancher and the woman grew stronger. They laughed together, shared stories, and found comfort in each other's company. The ranch, once silent and solitary, now held echoes of life, laughter, and quiet companionship. And through it all, Evelyn continued to wander the palms, naming them, sketching them, speaking to them as if they were old friends. Daniel understood now why she had chosen this place, why she had asked to be buried beneath the palms. It was not just a request. It was a declaration of love, memory, and connection. And he knew, deep down, that he would honor her wishes when the time came, not out of obligation, but out of respect for the life and spirit that had come to touch his own. Evenings on the ranch grew cooler, the sky turning deep shades of purple and blue. The wind whispered through the palms, carrying the quiet rhythm of life. Daniel often found himself standing at the edge of the grove, watching Evelyn as she moved among the trees, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known he was missing. He realized that life, even in its simplicity, could be extraordinary when shared with someone who truly understood its value. And so the ranch continued to thrive, not just with animals and crops, but with the presence of two souls who had found comfort, understanding, and connection in each other. Each day brought new stories, small joys, and moments of reflection. And as Daniel walked the paths of the ranch, he felt a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that this land, these palms, and this unexpected friendship had changed his life in ways he would never forget. As the days went on, Evelyn's presence on the ranch grew more comforting, yet the reality of her fragile health could no longer be ignored. Daniel had known from the beginning that her body was delicate, but he had hoped the clean air, the warmth of the sun, and the peace of the land might give her strength. Now, it was clear that her condition was worsening. Some mornings she woke tired and weak, her hands trembling as she tried to lift a glass of water. The ranch, which had become a sanctuary, was now also a place of quiet concern. Daniel found himself watching her more closely, noticing small changes in her movements, the way she winced slightly when she sat down, the way she sometimes forgot the words she wanted to say. Despite this, Evelyn's spirit remained strong. She refused to let her illness define her, spending hours beneath the palms, sketching the trees, writing in her notebook, and speaking to Daniel about the things she still wanted to see and feel. One afternoon, as the sun beat down on the ranch, Evelyn asked Daniel to sit with her beneath the tallest palm in the grove. She rested her head against the rough bark, closing her eyes as if drawing strength from the earth. "Daniel," she said softly, "do you remember when I first asked to stay here? I never imagined it would feel like this, like I'm finally part of something again. Even with my body failing, my heart feels alive." Daniel nodded, though his throat was tight with emotion. He had grown to care deeply for her, more than he had expected, and the thought of losing her filled him with a quiet dread. "You've brought life back to this place," he said, "more than I could have imagined. The ranch feels different, warmer, brighter because of you." Evelyn smiled faintly, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I know my time is short," she admitted. "I feel it every day. But I don't want to leave here without knowing that I will be remembered and that this land will hold a part of me." Her words hung in the air like a soft plea, heavy with meaning. From that moment, Daniel understood the true depth of her final request. It was no longer just a wish. It was a need, a way for her to stay connected to the land she loved even after she was gone. The thought of fulfilling this request filled him with a mix of honor, fear, and sorrow. He had never performed a burial himself, and the weight of the responsibility was overwhelming. Yet, he knew he could not refuse her. As her health declined, the daily tasks of the ranch became more challenging. Daniel had to work harder, balancing the care of the animals with tending to Evelyn's needs. He helped her walk across the fields, supported her as she sat beneath the palms, and prepared meals she could easily eat. It was exhausting work, both physically and emotionally, but he never complained. Each act of care was a way of showing respect for the life she had lived and the trust she had placed in him. Evelyn, for her part, remained remarkably resilient. She refused to be a burden, often insisting on doing small tasks herself, even if it meant struggling. She would water the plants, arrange flowers, and sketch the landscape with trembling hands. Daniel watched her with admiration, struck by the strength and dignity she carried despite her frailty. One morning, Evelyn awoke with a fever, her body shivering under the thin blanket. Daniel immediately called the town doctor, who confirmed that her condition was serious. "She won't recover fully," the doctor said gently, "but she can still live her days comfortably with care and attention." Daniel felt a pang in his chest, a mix of fear and determination. He would do whatever it took to make her final days peaceful, to honor her wishes, and to protect the moments of joy she still had left. During the following weeks, Daniel and Evelyn shared more intimate conversations than ever before. They spoke of life, death, and the small joys that often went unnoticed. Evelyn revealed her regrets, the moments she wished she could relive, and the lessons she had learned. Daniel listened with patience and empathy, sometimes offering advice, sometimes simply holding her hand in silent support. The bond between them grew deeper, built on trust, respect, and shared vulnerability. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, Evelyn looked at Daniel with a seriousness that made his stomach tighten. "When the time comes, Daniel," she said softly, "I want you to promise me something. I don't want sadness to rule this place. I want my burial to be simple, surrounded by the palms I love, and I want you to remember me not in grief, but in the life we shared here." Daniel swallowed hard, his hands gripping hers tightly. "I promise," he said, his voice low but firm. "I'll honor you, Evelyn. I'll make sure your memory lives on here with every tree, every breeze, every corner of this land." Her eyes glistened with tears, but she smiled, a smile filled with peace and gratitude. That night Daniel stayed awake longer than usual, walking the ranch in silence. He looked at the palms, the hills, and the quiet fields, imagining the day he would have to carry out her wish. The thought made his hands shake, not from physical effort, but from the weight of responsibility and emotion. Yet, he also felt a sense of purpose, a determination to honor the trust she had placed in him. Days blurred together as Evelyn's health continued to decline. She slept more, moved slower, and spoke less, but her presence remained strong, a quiet force that filled the ranch with meaning. Daniel stayed by her side, attending to her needs, reading to her, and sitting with her in silence beneath the palms. The ranch, once a place of routine and solitude, had become a sanctuary of compassion, reflection, and deep human connection. One afternoon, Evelyn asked Daniel to walk with her through the grove, even though her legs were weak. She paused beneath a cluster of palms, her hand brushing the fronds gently. "I've always loved these trees," she said. "They've witnessed my happiest moments, my memories, and soon they will witness my final rest. Promise me, Daniel, that you will remember them as I do, that you will honor this place as my home, even when I'm gone." Daniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I promise," he repeated, feeling the truth of his words resonate deep within him. "I will never forget." The following days were quiet, filled with gentle routines and small acts of care. Daniel helped Evelyn walk, guided her through the grove, and listened to her stories. He noticed the subtle changes in her energy, the moments when her smile would fade, or when her hands would tremble more than usual. Yet, she never complained, never allowed herself to be consumed by fear or sorrow. Instead, she focused on the beauty around her, the sunlight through the palms, the gentle sway of leaves in the wind, the quiet hum of life on the ranch. As the weeks drew closer to her final days, Daniel felt a growing sense of urgency. He prepared the land, clearing a small space beneath the tallest palms, softening the soil, and imagining the day he would have to fulfill her final wish. The thought made him anxious, but also determined. He wanted everything to be perfect, to honor her memory and the bond they had shared. Evelyn, sensing the care and effort Daniel was putting into preparing for her departure, expressed her gratitude. "You've given me something I never expected," she said one evening, her voice weak but steady. "A place to belong, a person who understands me, and a chance to spend my final days in peace. Thank you, Daniel, truly." Daniel shook his head, his own emotions threatening to spill over. "No, Evelyn, thank you. You've reminded me of what truly matters. You've shown me the beauty of connection, the strength of compassion, and the quiet power of presence. I'll never forget you." In the quiet moments that followed, they sat beneath the palms, watching the sun sink behind the hills. The wind whispered through the fronds, carrying a sense of calm and inevitability. Daniel felt the weight of the coming days, but also a profound sense of peace. He knew that he would honor her wishes, that he would care for her with the dignity and respect she deserved, and that the land itself would hold her memory long after she was gone. As evening fell, Evelyn rested her head against his shoulder, her breathing slow and steady. Daniel stroked her hair gently, feeling the fragility of life and the depth of human connection. The ranch, once just a place of work and routine, had become a sacred space, a place of love, respect, and final promises. And in that moment, Daniel understood something he had never realized before. Life's greatest lessons often came not in moments of triumph or success, but in acts of compassion, in quiet presence, and in the courage to face the inevitable with grace. Evelyn had come to the ranch seeking peace, and in doing so, she had given him a gift far greater than he could have imagined, the chance to care, to honor, and to connect in a way that would leave a lasting mark on both their lives. The days had grown shorter, and the golden light of the late afternoon cast long shadows across the ranch. The air was thick with the scent of earth and palm leaves, a smell that had become as familiar to Daniel as the sound of the wind through the trees. But the comfort of routine could no longer mask the truth. Evelyn's time was drawing near. Her body had grown weaker with each passing day, and even the simplest tasks left her exhausted. Yet, despite her frailty, her spirit remained bright, serene, and unyielding. Daniel watched her closely now, helping her walk through the grove, guiding her steps with steady hands. He noticed every small change, the subtle rise and fall of her chest, the way her hands trembled as she reached for the fronds of the palms, the quiet sigh that escaped her lips as she settled into the shade. Each moment carried a weight he could feel in his chest, a weight that grew heavier as he realized the inevitable was fast approaching. One late afternoon, Evelyn asked Daniel to sit beside her beneath her favorite palm. The fronds swayed gently above them, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the ground. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice thinner than before but still strong with determination, I think it may soon be time. I feel it in my bones. Please promise me again that when I go, you will bury me here. Not just anywhere, but right beneath these palms, where I can be close to the life I have loved." Daniel felt his throat tighten, his hands trembling as he gripped hers. He had known this day was coming, yet knowing and feeling it were entirely different. "I promise, Evelyn," he said, his voice low and steady, though his heart raced. "I will honor you. I'll make sure everything is as you wish. Your memory will live here with every tree, every breeze, every corner of this land." Evelyn smiled faintly, a small, serene expression filled with peace. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you can ever know." As the sun dipped behind the hills, Evelyn settled against the trunk of the palm, closing her eyes. Daniel sat beside her, holding her hand and feeling the fragile warmth of her skin. He thought about the life she had led, the stories she had shared, the laughter and trust they had built over the weeks. It was a rare gift, he realized, to be entrusted with someone's final wish, and he felt the profound responsibility weigh on him. The night came quietly, and Daniel stayed awake, checking on Evelyn every hour. He watched her breathe in the soft moonlight, her chest rising and falling with gentle rhythm. Occasionally she murmured words of memory, small fragments of her life, or whispered thanks to the land that had given her comfort. Daniel listened, tears threatening to spill, yet he did not disturb her. He knew these moments were sacred, moments of peace and reflection that she deserved fully. The following morning, Evelyn awoke with difficulty. Her legs shook as she tried to sit up, and Daniel was there immediately, steadying her, offering water and helping her adjust in the guest room. "Don't worry about me," she said softly, managing a small smile. "I only want to be here with the land with you. That is enough." Days passed in a quiet, solemn rhythm. Daniel helped her walk short distances, lifted her into the shade of the palms, and prepared meals she could manage. Every action carried an unspoken weight, the knowledge that these moments were fleeting, that soon she would no longer be there to smile, to speak, to share her presence with him. The ranch, once a place of calm routine, had become a stage for anticipation, grief, and the profound dignity of life's final moments. Then, one evening, as the sun bathed the grove in orange and gold, Evelyn's condition worsened. She struggled to breathe, her body trembling with exhaustion. Daniel rushed to her side, supporting her gently, speaking to her in soft, reassuring tones. "It's okay, Evelyn," he whispered. "I'm here. You're safe. You don't need to fight anymore." Evelyn's eyes fluttered open, and she looked at him with clarity and strength that belied her frail body. "Daniel," she said softly, "remember the palms, the land, the life here. Promise me you will remember." "I promise," he said, his voice breaking, tears streaming down his face. "I'll never forget." Her hand squeezed his weakly, and then she closed her eyes, letting the stillness of the grove and the rhythm of the earth cradle her. Daniel stayed beside her, feeling the profound silence of the moment, the kind of silence that holds both sorrow and reverence. He watched the last traces of light filter through the fronds, imagining that somehow they too were part of the farewell. Once Evelyn's breathing ceased, Daniel allowed himself a moment to grieve, kneeling beside her, pressing his forehead gently to her hand. The loss was deep, but there was also a sense of honor, knowing that he could now carry out her final request, fulfilling a promise that mattered more than anything. He rose slowly, determination taking hold, and turned toward the grove. The palms, tall and swaying in the gentle wind, seemed to welcome him. Their fronds moved like a chorus of whispers, carrying a sense of calm and acceptance. Daniel began the work of preparing the small space beneath the tallest palms. He cleared the soft earth, arranging it carefully, and dug with steady hands, each motion a blend of physical effort and emotional release. His muscles ached, his hands shook, but he did not stop. Each movement was a tribute, a prayer, a fulfillment of the promise he had made. As he worked, memories of Evelyn flooded his mind. The first day she had arrived at the ranch, the laughter they had shared, the stories of her childhood, the quiet evenings beneath the stars. He remembered the gentle way she had touched the fronds of the palms, the reverence in her eyes, and the strength of her spirit even in weakness. Every thought strengthened his resolve to honor her fully, to make this final act a testament to the life she had lived and the trust she had placed in him. Finally, as the sun began its descent, casting golden rays across the grove, Daniel placed Evelyn gently in the prepared space. He covered her with the earth he had dug, each handful a final gesture of care and respect. As he worked, the wind rustled the palms above, carrying a soft, almost musical sound. It was as if the land itself was participating in this farewell, offering a quiet blessing, a sense of peace. When the task was done, Daniel stepped back, his hands and clothes covered in soil, his body weary but his heart full. He looked at the grove, at the fronds swaying gently in the evening breeze, and felt a mixture of sorrow and serenity. Evelyn was gone from the world, yet her presence lingered, woven into the land, the trees, and the quiet rhythm of the ranch. He sat beside the small mound, tracing the outline of the palms with his eyes, imagining her spirit resting peacefully beneath them. Memories of her laughter, her stories, and her quiet determination filled his mind. Though grief pressed heavily on his chest, there was also a profound sense of connection, a knowledge that he had honored her in the way she had asked. As night fell, Daniel lit a small lantern beside the grove, casting a soft glow over the palms and the freshly turned earth. He sat in silence, reflecting on the journey they had shared, the bond that had grown from curiosity to trust, from trust to deep, unspoken understanding. He thought of the lessons she had taught him, the value of compassion, the strength of human connection, the dignity of honoring someone's wishes, and the quiet beauty of presence. The ranch, now quieter than ever, seemed to hold her memory in every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the wind, every shadow cast by the moonlight. Daniel felt her presence in the gentle sway of the palms, in the soft hum of insects at night, in the warmth of the earth beneath his hands. He realized that though she was gone, she had left a part of herself behind, a legacy of love, resilience, and reverence for life. He stayed until the stars emerged, watching the sky darken and the cool night air settle over the grove. Daniel knew that the days ahead would be filled with reflection, sorrow, and adjustment. But he also knew that the land would forever carry Evelyn's memory, and that he would honor her in every small action, every glance at the palms, every quiet moment beneath the stars. And in that stillness, Daniel understood something profound. Life's meaning is often found not in grand gestures or monumental achievements, but in acts of love, trust, and presence. By fulfilling Evelyn's final wish, by honoring her in the way she had asked, he had not only given her peace, he had transformed the ranch, the land, and his own heart. The grove of palms, bathed in moonlight, seemed to breathe with the memory of her life. Daniel rose slowly, brushing the soil from his hands, and walked back toward the house. He knew that the ranch would never be the same, But in that change lay a quiet beauty, a lasting testament to the bond they had shared and the respect he had shown. Evelyn was gone from this world, but she lived on in the whisper of the palms, the rhythm of the land, and the memory of a life honored and cherished. The days after Evelyn's passing were quiet on the ranch, quieter than Daniel had ever known. The routines continued, the feeding of the cattle, the tending of the garden, the small chores that kept the land alive. But there was a gentle emptiness in the air. The house felt larger, and the grove of palms, once filled with the soft murmur of Evelyn's presence, now stood solemn and still. Yet, within that stillness, Daniel felt a new kind of connection, a quiet awareness that her spirit lingered in the land she had loved so dearly. Each morning he would walk to the grove, tracing the paths they had walked together, remembering the small joys they had shared. He touched the fronds of the palms, ran his fingers through the soft earth of her resting place, and felt a strange comfort in the continuity of life around him. Birds still sang in the trees, the cattle moved slowly through the fields, and the wind continued its gentle song through the palms. Daniel realized that while Evelyn's body was gone, her presence had left a mark that time could not erase. He spent hours reading her notebook, which she had left behind. Its pages were filled with delicate handwriting, sketches of the ranch, reflections on life, and small stories of her childhood. Daniel found himself laughing at her humor, pausing at moments of quiet wisdom, and sometimes letting tears slip freely when he felt the weight of her absence. Her words were a gift, a connection that transcended her passing, and he treasured them as one might treasure a rare and precious keepsake. As the weeks passed, Daniel began to notice subtle changes in himself. He approached the land with renewed awareness, taking in the little details he had once overlooked, the curve of a palm frond, the way sunlight filtered through the leaves at dawn, the quiet patterns of shadows across the fields. Every sound, every scent, every motion seemed richer, more alive. Evelyn had taught him, without intending to, how to truly see the world, how to appreciate the small moments that often went unnoticed, and how to find meaning in the simplicity of life. Visitors occasionally came to the ranch, travelers passing through, neighbors from nearby towns, but Daniel found himself sharing Evelyn's stories with them, not to boast, but to honor her memory. He spoke of her laughter, her gentle wisdom, and the deep love she had held for the land. Each story became a living testament to the woman who had touched his life so profoundly. Even those who had never met her felt the depth of her spirit through his words. One afternoon, Daniel walked through the grove with a sense of reverence. He knelt beside Evelyn's resting place, brushing his hand across the soft earth. "I hope you can feel it," he whispered. "I hope you know that you are remembered, that this land still holds your spirit in every corner, in every tree, in every breeze." The palms swayed gently above him, their fronds moving as though in answer, a quiet chorus to his words. He imagined her smile, serene and grateful, and found solace in the thought that she was still present in the very life of the ranch. Daniel also began to see changes in himself on a more personal level. He felt lighter, more patient, and more attentive to the lives around him. He spoke to neighbors and travelers with warmth and understanding, shared stories of Evelyn's life, and helped others appreciate the quiet beauty of the land. Her presence had changed him, leaving him more compassionate, more connected, and more aware of the fleeting but precious moments that life offered. The ranch itself seemed transformed. The grove of palms, once simply a cluster of trees, now held a sacred significance. Each frond, each shadow, each pattern of sunlight felt imbued with Evelyn's essence. Daniel often found himself lingering beneath the tallest palms, listening to the wind, imagining the soft murmur of her voice, the gentle laughter that had once echoed through the grove. The land had become a living memorial, a testament to the life she had lived and the bond they had shared. One evening, as the sky turned shades of deep purple and gold, Daniel stood at the edge of the grove and looked over the ranch. Memories of Evelyn's arrival, her laughter, her stories, and her gentle insistence on being buried beneath the palms all washed over him. He thought of the first days she had spent wandering the land, the small chores she had insisted on doing despite her weakness, and the quiet strength she had displayed until her final moments. He realized that life was fragile, yet beautiful, and that the moments of love and connection they had shared were eternal in their own way. In the months that followed, Daniel continued to honor Evelyn's memory by tending the ranch with care, sharing her stories, and living with the mindfulness she had inspired. Visitors often remarked on the serene atmosphere, the sense of peace that seemed to flow from the grove of palms. Daniel would smile quietly, knowing that it was not the land alone that held this peace, but the memory of the woman who had loved it so deeply and had entrusted him with her final wish. As the seasons changed, Daniel found himself reflecting on the lessons Evelyn had left behind. She had taught him about the quiet strength of human connection, the dignity of honoring a promise, and the beauty of living fully even in the shadow of mortality. Her presence, though now absent in body, continued to guide him, shaping the way he interacted with the world and the land he had long cherished. One crisp morning, Daniel invited a few neighbors to the ranch. They walked through the grove together, listening to the rustle of the palms and the distant sounds of cattle. Daniel shared Evelyn's favorite stories, her love for the land, and the small, meaningful ways she had enriched his life. The neighbors listened in awe, some with tears in their eyes, understanding the depth of the bond that had existed and the enduring significance of her life. In quiet moments, Daniel often found himself speaking directly to Evelyn, as if she were still beside him. "I've kept my promise," he would say softly. "The land remembers you, I remember you. Every day, every tree, every breeze carries your spirit." And in the rustle of the palms, he felt her presence, a gentle reassurance that she was at peace, surrounded by the land she had loved so dearly. Time moved forward as it always does, but Daniel carried Evelyn's memory with him in every step. He planted new flowers near her resting place, tended the palms with extra care, and preserved the grove exactly as it had been when she first arrived. Visitors who came to the ranch could feel the quiet reverence, the sense that life and memory were intertwined in a way that transcended the ordinary. Even in his solitude, Daniel never felt alone. The memory of Evelyn, the lessons she had imparted, and the beauty of the land they had shared together filled him with a quiet strength and a sense of purpose. The ranch had become more than a home or a workplace. It was now a sanctuary, a place where life, memory, and love coexisted in perfect harmony. As years passed, Daniel often walked through the grove at dawn, watching the sunlight filter through the palm fronds and listening to the whisper of the wind. He could almost hear Evelyn's voice, soft and gentle, reminding him to appreciate each day, each moment, and each small miracle of life. Her presence had become a living part of the land, a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. In reflecting on her life and their shared time, Daniel understood that the true meaning of connection was not in the length of time spent together, but in the depth of care, trust, and understanding shared between souls. Evelyn had entrusted him with her final wish, and in honoring it, he had discovered a deeper sense of empathy, compassion, and the quiet power of human kindness. The grove of palms remained as serene and majestic as ever, standing tall and unwavering against the elements, a constant reminder of Evelyn's life, her wishes, and the love that had blossomed quietly in that remote corner of the world. Daniel knew that one day others would come to see the grove, to feel the peace it exuded, and to hear the stories of the woman who had touched his life so profoundly. And in that way, her memory would continue to inspire, console, and uplift for generations to come. In the stillness of the evening, Daniel often paused beneath the tallest palms, placing his hand on the rough bark where Evelyn had once leaned and whispering a simple truth. You are remembered. You are loved. You are part of this land forever. The wind stirred the fronds gently, and in the rustle he imagined a quiet acknowledgement, a soft sigh of approval from the woman whose life had changed his forever. Through the years, Daniel carried on with his work on the ranch, living fully, mindfully, and with a heart opened by the lessons Evelyn had imparted. Every sunrise, every breeze through the palms, and every quiet moment beneath the sky reminded him of the extraordinary bond they had shared, the trust she had placed in him, and the enduring power of honoring someone's life and final wishes. And so, the ranch continued to thrive, not just with animals and crops, but with the spirit of a woman who had chosen to spend her final days among the palms she loved. Her memory became woven into the very fabric of the land, a living, breathing legacy that Daniel cherished every day. He understood that life, even when fleeting, could leave an indelible mark on the world, and that love, care, and remembrance could make that mark last forever. In the quiet evenings, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the shadows of the palms stretched across the earth, Daniel would smile softly, feeling her presence in the wind, the rustling leaves, and the golden light. Evelyn had come to the ranch seeking peace, and in the process she had given him something just as precious, a deeper understanding of life, connection, and the quiet, enduring power of memory. And in that understanding, Daniel found solace, purpose, and a sense of completeness. The grove of palms, the land, and the life they had shared together remained a testament to her spirit, a symbol of love, honor, and the beauty of living fully, even in the shadow of farewell.